For decades, the Iranian regime has been carrying out targeted attacks against critics of the regime living abroad. One of the most high-profile targets is President Trump. 5 years ago, after Trump ordered an airstrike that killed Iran's most powerful military commander, Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, promised revenge.
A successful attack by the Iranian government within the United States against any individual could be perceived as an act of war.
In the midst of the 2024 presidential election, the US accused Iran of attempting to assassinate Trump, a charge Iran denied.
You do any attacks on former presidents or candidates for president, your country gets blown to smithereens.
Iranian journalists and dissidents around the world have increasingly found themselves in the crosshairs of the Iranian regime.
هر کدومتون که یک روز هم کار رسانه‌ای علیه این نظام کرده باشین همتون خواهین خورد.
They wanted to attach a bomb into my car.
Criminal proxies are being used to carry out the abductions and assassinations.
We believe these plots come from the organisations which are part of the Iranian state apparatus.
I've been following the plots across Turkey, Britain, and North America. And one name keeps coming up again and again. An organized crime boss who court documents reveal has been doing the dirty work for the Iranian regime. His name, Naji Sharifi Zindashti. This is the story of a chilling connection between Iranian security forces and international criminal networks. A story of murder for hire.
Horizontal camera
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Sound is okay? For 2 decades, I've reported conflicts in the Middle East, investigating assassinations and corruption tied to the Islamic Republic of Iran. But 2 years ago, it came right to my doorstep. Over the last few years, I and many Iranian journalists have been subjected to online harassment and threats from the Iranian security forces. Sima Sabed is a former host of a talk show on Iran International, a Farsi TV station that broadcasts into Iran. She and her former colleagues were targeted for assassination, first by a car bomb and then a knife attack. But the people smuggler who was commissioned to do the hit turned double agent.
They wanted to attach a bomb into my car, and later, based on the information that they gathered around my home, they realized that, oh, I come with my car out of a secure car park. So he was instructed to go and target me in the corridors, in the lift, or somewhere inside the building, to follow me and just stab me. It was Unit 840 of the Quds Force, and he was giving the order to a person who was a Syrian commander, and he was the one who was a double agent. So that's how I am alive now, because he went to the security services and informed them.
Western sanctions have targeted Iranian security forces, including the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps that reports to Iran's supreme leader. It's Quds Force, an elite unit of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, responsible for conducting covert operations outside Iran's border, and it's Unit 840 that's responsible, among other things, for planning and establishing terror infrastructure. Iran's Ministry of Intelligence and Iranian diplomats have also been sanctioned for their role in murder and abduction plots. The Islamic Republic of Iran has imprisoned many journalists and restricted their activities simply for doing their jobs. Like many others, I left the country and continue to cover Iran from here in the UK. But I never thought one day I have to watch my back on the streets of London. This wave of violent plots orchestrated by the Iranian security forces has raised serious concerns within UK counter-terrorism agencies. The UK Domestic Security Service, MI5, has reported 20 credible plots against Iranian nationals in the UK since 2022.
We're determined to protect those individuals. We're determined to protect free and fair broadcasting and journalism from the UK. And we are going after hard those individuals who either think they can project that from places like Iran, or they think that they can simply enter into a contract with organised or low-level criminals to do that dirty work for them.
But I've been following evidence that shows the plots reach far wider. In 2017, Said Karimian was assassinated on the streets of Istanbul. He ran a series of TV channels, Gem TV, that aired Western movies and series to Iran. In the eyes of Islamic regime, the programs were against Islamic values. At the time, I was the BBC correspondent there.
Well, our correspondent Jiyar Gol joins us now from Istanbul.
Some other people on social media, they say there was a lot of murky businesses. It might be actually some sort of business feud or gangs-related issue. But what we know definitely, Iranian regime wasn't happy with the kind of program he was showing it.
Just 2 years later, Masoud Moulavi Vardanjani, a former member of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards who had defected, was assassinated in Istanbul. He'd been publishing details of corruption at the highest level in the Iranian leadership on his Telegram account called Black Box. An Iranian diplomat on his way to Tehran was arrested in Istanbul airport in connection with the plot, but was later released after he claimed diplomatic immunity. I got hold of this copy of the Turkish court document and the investigation around the assassination of Said Karimian in Istanbul. There is a suspect name here, Naji Sharifi Zindashti. I've heard that name before, but in connection with drug trafficking, not political assassination. Temur Soykan is one of Turkey's leading investigative journalists and has exposed crime and corruption at the highest levels.
Karimian'ın öldürüldüğü gün ise aracının önü beyaz bir otomobil tarafından kesildi ve çarşaf giymiş 2 kişi tarafından uzun namlulu silahlarla ateş açıldı. O sırada yine güvenlik kameraları incelendiğinde Karimian'ın öldürülmesinden hemen önce oradan Zindashti'nin şoförünün bulunduğu aracın geçtiği tespit edildi. Yani buradan da savcılar şu sonuca vardılar. Hem cinayetin keşif çalışmalarını yaptı Zindashti'nin şoförü, hem de cinayet anında hedefi tetikçilere gösterdi. Hatta daha sonra Keremyan öldükten sonra bu şoförün Zindashti'nin yanına gittiği, Zindashti'nin kullandığı bir telefonla irtibat kurduğu tespit edildi. Bunun üzerine Zindashti Keremyan cinayetinde bir numaralı sanık oldu.
A year later, Zindashti was arrested in connection with the killing. He was held for 6 months, but was then released. In October 2020, another dissident was targeted. Habib Chab was lured from Sweden to Turkey and abducted. The Iranian regime accused Chab of plotting attacks against Iranian security forces. He was smuggled back to Iran, where a confession was extracted. After a show trial, he was convicted and executed. Again, someone related to Zindashti was arrested in Turkey in connection with the kidnapping. This time, his nephew. So, who is this man, Naji Sharifi Zindashti? He was known to be a notorious drug trafficker in Turkey. But is there more to him?
Zindashti çok güçlü bir adam, güçlü bir ilişkileri var istihbaratçılarla, devletle.
Turkey is one of the meeting points for drug routes from the east and criminal gangs supplying drugs to Europe and the west. Zindashti grew up in the border area of Iran that has seen drugs trafficked for decades. Someone who knows his history and whose identity we are concealing for his own safety says in 1996, while he was still a young man, drug running is what brought him to the attention of the authorities in Iran. He's portrayed here by an actor.
Naji was arrested for drug smuggling and sentenced to death. But rumors later surfaced that he killed a prison guard and had escaped from Tehran prison. Now we finally understand the true reason behind his release. If someone is sentenced to death and kills a prison guard and escapes, there is no doubt that he will be executed by Iranian Islamic laws. So, the only plausible way for him to return and live freely would be if he'd been working for Iran's intelligence services.
Vardanjani cinayetinde ise tetikçinin yine bu şoförün kardeşi olan ve Zindashti'nin çalışanı gözüken, bahçıvan olarak onun kadrolu çalışanı görünen kişi olduğu, yani onun adamı olduğu tespit edildi. Çünkü Zindashti 2 cinayetle suçlanıyordu. Örneğin Keremyan ve Vardanjani, ama bununla sınırlı değildi.
Zindashti, who the US authorities say is an asset of the Iranian Ministry of Intelligence, is the prime suspect in each of the plots against the Iranian dissidents in Turkey. In 2017, for the murder of Said Keremyan. In 2019, for the murder of Masoud Molavi Vardanjani. And in 2020, the abduction of Habib Chab. Turkey has charged Iranian diplomats and people linked to Zindashti for their roles in the plots.
Ben orada bir tür hani İran devletinin ya da İran istihbarat aygıtının eline bir koz verdiğini ve artık mecbur kaldığını düşünüyorum Zindashti'nin.
If you look at Naji's social media, you will see he's a strong supporter of the regime. He's been meeting with tribal leaders, securing their loyalty to the regime. This is all part of Iran's intelligence operation.
Orada da Zindashti reddediyor bu iddiaları. İran gizli servisiyle ilişkisi olduğuna yönelik iddiaları reddediyor ama rejim muhaliflerinin yok edilmesinde ya da ortadan kaldırılmasında, kaçırılmasında, İran'ın hoşlanmadığı insanların yok edilmesinde hep bir şekilde Zindashti ve adamlarının izi gözüküyor. Ve bu da açıklanmaya muhtaç bir durum. Bu ilk defa değil aslında ama hep organize suçla istihbarat örgütleri arasında bir bağ vardı.
Yani Zindashti sadece Keremiyan, Vardanjani ve Habib Şahap'ın uyuşturucu kaçakçılığı, başka farklı cinayetler vardı dosyanın içinde. Ona rağmen bu çok ağır suçlamalara ve büyük dosyaya rağmen 6 ay içerisinde serbest bırakılması çok büyük bir hukuki skandaldı. Bu da hatta hepimizi şoke etti.
Well, some breaking news now from 11 News investigates involving a murder-for-hire plot, a member of the Hells Angels, and the Iranian government.
The U.S. Department of Justice and FBI have indicted several people for plotting to assassinate 2 Maryland residents.
A year later, Naji Sharifi was implicated in yet another plot, this time more than 5,000 miles away, just outside the U.S. Capitol in Maryland.
The feds charged 1 Iranian and 2 Canadian nationals for plotting the murders of 2 Maryland residents, one of whom had defected from Iran, according to court documents.
It has been few months I've been investigating Naji Sharifi Zindashti's action in Turkey, in Iran, and possibly linked to UK. I have come to Washington, D.C., here, the seat of power. I really hope to be able to talk to U.S. officials, current and former officials in intelligence community, just to find out who was the target in Maryland.
We have seen that the IRGC and Quds Force are a part of Iran's efforts to undertake both lethal plots to kidnap and also to harass dissidents and other perceived opponents. I think there is a growing body of evidence, and some of this evidence is now public following the January indictment and the sanctions that we imposed on Zindashti and his co-conspirators about this plot. And I think what we've seen is, you know, this is one example of the Iranian regime's efforts to use transnational plotting to coordinate with organized criminal groups in order to target its perceived opponents.
In December 2023, this document was filed in the District of Minnesota against Hells Angels members. What is interesting here, the prosecutor refers to the target as victim number 1 who had defected from Iran. It is very clear whoever this person was must have been a member of Iranian establishment. That's why they were so angry. They came after this person. This document also transcribes an online chat on how to kill victim number 1. And Zindashti has been communicating with this criminal group. He says it must be overkill. Eventually, they agree on $370,000. And Zindashti said, you have to make a show, make an example of him. We gotta erase his head from his torso. Zindashti, who the US authorities say is an asset of the Iranian Ministry of Intelligence, was caught agreeing to pay this money in an online chat. At the sharp end of this assassination plot were 2 criminals who were members of the same Hells Angels biker gang.
We have seen evidence of this kind of coordination between Iranian government officials and criminal organizations, whether it's drug traffickers, organizations such as the Hells Angels. And I think some of this evidence is now public, as we've seen through the publication of the indictment against Zindashti and his network.
10 years ago, some US media claimed General Ali Reza Asghari, a former deputy defense minister of Iran, had defected to the United States and was living under CIA protection. Was he the target in Maryland?
Congestion. You are on the fastest route. You will arrive at 6:21 p.m.
Obviously, the officials here, they don't want to talk about the subject. Whenever you write to them or call them, they say, oh, it's ongoing cases, we do not make comments about it.
General Asghari was one of the founders of Lebanese Hezbollah. He held key insights about Iran's nuclear activities and Hezbollah. Zindashti may have been assigned to kill Asghari, someone who the regime believed had betrayed its secrets.
The official U.S. position is that we do not know his location, and you should believe that.
In Israeli intelligence communities, they told us actually most likely Alireza Asghari was already working with Western intelligence agency.
I am the one U.S. official that would know everything about this. I was the national intelligence manager for Iran for almost 10 years. I was the chief of the Iran operations division for 2 years and ran multiple Iranian and Middle East operations for 35 years. But the official line is all I'm going to say.
It's been 20 years since I was here. It's very pleasant. I see so many different nationality, culture, people sitting together, drinking, eating. But again, I can't believe it. I'm here for such a dark story.
In this indictment, the FBI names 4 members of Iranian intelligence service for orchestrating a kidnapping plot in New York. The target was Masih Alinejad, a female Iranian activist. But none of these individuals have been arrested.
جوانه میزنم به روی زخم بر تنم فقط به حکم بودنم که من زنم When I get nervous, I sing. And this is a song about women.
Let's do it like they do on episodic shows and start with the most dramatic scene first. So a couple of years ago, 4 Iranian agents were actually charged in absentia with trying to kidnap you.
Can you believe that? First of all, they're scared of women. When they came after me here, my job was just giving voice to voiceless women inside Iran.
First, they sent someone here to kidnap her. And the plot was so crazy that I got multiple phone calls from journalists saying, this can't be true. This is kooky. Because they were going to grab her here in New York. They were going to put her on a small boat to a fishing boat. The fishing boat was going to go down to Venezuela. They were going to take her in Venezuela, put her on an airplane to Tehran, show trial, and then one could only assume kill her. When it was publicly exposed, that did not dissuade them from trying again. And this time, they sent an Azeri Shia to the front step of her home, literally to her doorstep. And she happened to have one of those doorbell cameras. And so the guy with his iPhone taking footage of her front porch without realizing that he's being recorded himself, which is why we have this footage. And he gets arrested right around the corner from her house with an AR-15 and ammunition in his car. That's how brazen the Iranians are in terms of the pursuit of these external operations.
If it was not the FBI stopping the kidnapping plot, I would have been in Iran now executed. The FBI actually arrested a man with a loaded gun in front of my house in Brooklyn.
Just like in the Maryland case, the hitmen carrying out these plots weren't Iranian at all. They were hired hands. notorious international criminal gang from the former Soviet Union, known as the Thieves-in-Law. But the threat leads back to 4 Iranian intelligence officers, 5 members of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, and a member of the elite Quds Force. You mentioned there have been credible threats. Why we only had 1 prosecution? We didn't have more prosecution.
There are occasions when we can work over a period to gather evidence to bring about a prosecution, or occasions when the evidence for that prosecution is really there in the hands of people, and in the case of somebody who has the images, you know, we're able to build a case of why those images might have been useful for terrorist purposes. On other occasions, frankly, we just need to get the person at risk to a place of safety.
In January 2024, the UK government sanctioned Zindashti, 2 members of his gang convicted in relation to plots in Turkey, 2 Iranian diplomats, and Unit 840 of the elite Quds Force of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards.
The IRGC and Iranian intelligence turned a blind eye, or permitted him to traffic drugs domestically and internationally. In exchange, he aids them to the targeted abductions and killings of Iranian dissidents abroad.
I managed to track down a rare interview that Zindashti had done with a journalist from Iran, who asked him about his involvement in the plots and attacks.
یا مسعود ملویده چه واقعا مدیده چنینه و چه دادگاهی چنینه یعنی تنه مدیده ده هیا پولیس دا دادگاه دا آلی مسعود ملوی دا هلا چتش تومت مده مالا ما بخیاد کن چه شرطا نگه نهاده امنیتی ایرانی نگه میتا ترکاوانه مرگه چه نبونه تکیلی چه نبونه اما گل یه عشایری گل یه منطقه گل پایگاه منطقه همون یک دنافس کنته این دچین چی یارمتی شبیده کنیان.
A campaign against Iranian dissidents and journalists is one thing, but an FBI investigation has linked Iran to even more high-profile targets.
In other news, the FBI says it thwarted a murder-for-hire plan targeting President-elect Donald Trump. So the Justice Department today disclosed criminal charges, revealing that Iranian government official directed a contact here in the United States to kill Donald Trump before the election.
General Qasem Soleimani, the commander of IRGC elite Quds Force, was killed in 2020 under orders of President Trump. The IRGC commanders vow to avenge his death. Since then, the FBI has foiled suspected IRGC attempts to kill President Trump and former members of his administration who were involved in the decision. The Iranian regime has rejected the allegations.
The Iranian government has refuted that officially, and I once again refute that. We don't send people to assassinate people. I think that's a campaign ploy.
But Donald Trump's return to the White House could spell trouble for Tehran's leadership.
As Commander-in-Chief, I have no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions, and that is exactly what I am going to do. We will do it at a level that nobody's ever seen before. With these actions, we will begin.
Over the last 2 years, intelligence services, both in the US and Europe, say lethal operations against critics of the regime have accelerated. Meanwhile, the alleged kingpin behind many of these plots, Naji Sharifi Zindashti, remains a wanted man.